Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the PHYSIOMICS Trading Update Investor Presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and as usual, your participation will be highly appreciated. And I'd now like to hand over to CEO Jim Millen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you very much, and welcome to this what will be a fairly short trading update for PHYSIOMICS PLC, just following our RNS last week. Mainly just rehearsing some of the points that were made in that RNS. Hopefully to reassure you guys that everything is on track here at PHYSIOMICS. And I'll do my best to answer at least a good selection of the questions that have come through prior to the meeting and any that come through during the meeting. The usual disclaimer, please read it at your leisure. So I've left in the first 2 or 3 slides that I normally present just in case there are any shareholders attending today who are less familiar or newer to the company. So PHYSIOMICS, a mathematical modeling company, run effectively as a consultancy with expertise in cancer, in quantitative pharmacology, PK/PD modeling, in data analysis, curation and visualization, and in coding, including some AI techniques. 2 parts to our business really at the moment. The CRO consultancy part, which is set out on the left-hand side there, providing a soup to nuts service if that's what our clients want, or much more specialized analyses, usually for our larger clients such as Servier most recently, and Merck Serono over some years. On the other hand, we've had also a number of grants that we've used to fund some projects in personalized oncology, specifically in personalized dosing. I think those of you who follow the company will be very familiar with the several initiatives that we've got going on there at the moment, including a observational clinical trial being run down in Portsmouth, and also a collaboration with DoseMeRx, which is part of a larger listed US group called Tabula Rasa Healthcare. And again, we'll come back to give a little update on that later. We continue to add names, both large and small, to this list of clients. It's not a complete list because some of our clients require that we don't disclose their names for reasons of confidentiality. But I guess most notably, since I gave my last update in April, I think it was, we signed a contract with the large French pharmaceutical company Servier. And also we have worked with a number of small companies. I don't believe Decentis is actually new. I did have a question about this. It is a small project, and it may have failed to be announced for that reason. It's not disclosable in terms of its size, but we probably should have highlighted that. It has in fact been on our website for some months in any case, for those of you who are more eagle-eyed. I won't cover this slide again. I mean, we help our clients in various different ways to support the drug development, the drug R&D process, from approximately mid-stage discovery through to approximately mid-stage clinical, which covers quite a broad swathe of the R&D process. We do focus mainly on cancer, but we do operate in some other areas as well. And recently we've done projects in, for example, dermatology and immunology. We're doing quite a bit of work in immuno-oncology, as we've highlighted in the past, and indeed, the focus of our most recent new client project, which is Servier, is in that space, in the immuno-oncology space, which continues to be very interesting and a significant focus for R&D spend in the industry. So just running through the key points from the update last week, there may be 1 or 2 things in here that were not covered. Total income and profit after tax for the financial year ended 30th of June 2022 are likely to be in line with market expectations. By that I mean in line with the forecast that our broker Hybridan puts out. Obviously, we have a pretty good idea about what our revenues are going to be. We're still totting out the costs, so there may be some small variations, but I'm not expecting any surprises there. We should deliver on the numbers that Hybridan has had out for us. I believe that following the RNS last week, Hybridan slightly increased. Well, that they put out a new forecast for the current financial year, but in terms of the one that's just gone, then I think we're in good shape. I will just observe that we made a number of investments, deliberate investments during the year, in areas where we felt they would lead to long-term value generation. And I guess the most significant investments were those in people, right? So we took on 2 new technical members of staff, as well as a head of business development over the course of the year. By far, that's our biggest expansion since I've been CEO, which has been just around 6 years now. And I hope that you'll take that as a sign that we expect to grow the business going forwards. For a long time we have grown, slowly and incrementally, controlled our costs out of a desire to control our costs and not add too much fixed headcount. We have maintained a fairly steady cash balance over the last years, since our last raise a couple of years ago. But during that raise, we did say we wanted to invest in growth, and that's what I believe we've done, and that's what contributed to a slightly higher level of cash outflow in the last 12 months than we saw in the couple of years prior to that. But I just want to reassure the market that it's part of a planned, investment program, which we eventually expect to deliver increased revenues. Despite all of this, our cash position remains, I believe, pretty strong. We've got £687,000 in the bank at the end of the financial year. And assuming that there would be no change in the cash outflows, and that's not a forecast, by the way, we're still in the process of doing a formal forecast for the next couple of years, but just doing simple math, if the cash outflow remained the same, that would give us very close to 2 years of cash, which we're very comfortable with. Obviously, our objective will be to close that cash flow gap through increased revenues and business. Also just to note that over the course of the financial year, we signed new or follow-on business with a number of existing clients, including those you see listed there. I won't read them all out. The little new one, Decentis, I mentioned earlier, and Cairo was new this year. Bicycle was a repeat. Numab, I believe, was a repeat this year, and then Merck KGaA, of course. The other thing that I've noted previously is that we signed a first agreement with a French big pharma company, Servier. Apologies if there was any confusion on this. I did get a couple of questions saying, is Servier the big company that we were talking about? And the answer is yes, Servier is the big company that we were talking about over the course of the last 6 months, and we were very pleased. We were delighted to be selected by them for what is quite a significant project, both in terms of of its materiality, but also in terms of the targets that it's looking at, which I'm afraid I can't disclose, but can say that they're novel targets in the immuno-oncology space. So we continue to build our capabilities in that area. The other thing that we did since our last announcement was retain a highly experienced new non-executive director in the form of Dr. Tim Korn. Tim comes to us with extensive experience of working in small companies, both private companies and AIM-listed companies, where he's worked as a non-executive director and also as a chairman from time to time. He's a very experienced drug developer, and obviously that knowledge could be quite helpful for us as we consult with our clients and also look at other options for the company to grow more quickly going forwards. In terms of the observational clinical trial, I actually have a slide on that, so perhaps I won't dwell on that too long at this point. But just to say that we are generating data. I think we've had about 25 patients. We're conducting an interim analysis now, and the purpose of the trial, as we've mentioned on a number of occasions, is to further validate and develop the tool that we've put together over the last couple of years with grant funding. Then just a note, I don't think this was in the RNS, and it's not new, but just to observe that at the end of June, our partner Valorex announced that they were extending the exclusivity period for a small US biotech company called Theorem RX to complete a proposed sub-licensing of one of the Valorex compounds, Val201, which is the compound, as you guys will remember, where we had a risk-sharing agreement with you. So, you know as much as I do on that. I don't have any inside track there, but I guess just to note that that is still under discussion. I thought it would just be worth noting of total income over the course of the last couple of years, and in particular over the last 12 months. So what this dotted bar shows is simply the level of second half revenue for the year just completed that would get us to the Hybridan forecast, which I think is 860, if I'm correct. Yeah. We are saying today that we believe we're going to hit that, and that would represent almost an 18% growth over the previous year's revenue. Obviously, our previous year was down because of COVID and because of some risk-sharing activities that we engaged in, as I've discussed previously. Nevertheless, it seems to me that this represents a strong bounce back. And if we do hit that forecast or even overachieve against it, then either way, that will represent another year where we have hit a highest ever total income level. Then just a quick update on the partner study. So this is the observational clinical trial going on down in Portsmouth. We have interim data from about 24 patients, and we are using that to pull together a report for the NIHR right now. The study will continue to recruit until the end of Q3. And then during Q4, we will conduct a final analysis, which incorporates, both the interim analysis, but also further patients that will have been recruited, have already been recruited, in fact, between now and then. Some of the things that we're looking at, just for your interest, are the ability of the tool to predict clinically relevant events. Primarily, this relates to toxicities. So as we've talked about previously, the tool helps clinicians predict the level of neutropenia. That's the level of depression of white cell count associated with chemotherapy, in particular docetaxel in this context. And that low level of white cells can sometimes lead to certain adverse events with patients, such as neutropenic fever. So one of the things that we're doing in our interim analysis is to look at what actually happened to these patients, to look at what the tool was predicting for them at that time, and to try and make links. And obviously, I'm sure you guys can see that the potential value is where we can determine that we can have some predictive power in relation to those associations. The other thing which we also think is quite interesting is in relation to the use of a drug called GCSF. Its full name is spelt out on the slide there, but I'll call it GCSF. And what this drug does is stimulate cells in the bone marrow to increase production of white cells. So it's often given by clinicians in conjunction with chemotherapy to preempt the reduction in white cells that is often associated with chemo. GCSF is a biological drug. it's many forms of it are still on patent, and those patented forms are quite expensive, especially in the US. So you can see that if the tool is able to make any predictions about the potential utility or otherwise of this drug when used to treat patients that are being given chemo, that could be a useful thing as well. So I'm not saying that we will be able to, but these are the sorts of things that we're looking at in relation to the tool. I had a lot of questions about next steps. Where is this initiative going? What happens after this? I'm not going to be able to give you fully satisfying answers at this stage, I'm afraid. Some of the possibilities going forwards include, further development or evolution of the tool to incorporate and take advantage of any findings that we generate from the analysis of the partner data. We still have a dialogue going with DoseMeRx, and this could also form part of that. And then the other thing that is an obvious possibility is to extend our work with, for example, MIHR, by applying for follow-on grants, which could potentially be larger than the I think it was approximately 150 grand grant that funded the current clinical trial. So there's some of the ways in which we can move this forwards. So I'll just make a brief summary, and then I will go to the questions that we received prior to this call, and then I'll have a quick look at the questions that have been submitted over the course of this meeting as well, and then we'll see where we get to. So really the purpose of this presentation was simply to say, the company is performing per market expectations. Cash situation is good in my opinion. We have made some investments this year, and that has led to a slightly higher level of cash outflow. But that, for the most part, is a very deliberate strategy on the part of the company to invest for growth, and it is something that we said we would do when the time is right, and we believe the time is right. We are in the process of conducting an interim analysis of the partner trial data, and we await the results of that with interest, as I described in the previous slide. And we are also continuing with the board to look at other potential opportunities for growth, as and when those are identified and we feel that they're sufficiently tangible and likely, we will bring those back to you guys and provide an update. Okay, so I will move on to the questions unless...
No, absolutely, Jim. Absolutely. Thank you very much, firstly, for your presentation. But let me just give you a few moments to have a look at those questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your question and press send. But just while Jim takes a few moments to review the questions submitted already, along with obviously those pre-submitted ones, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Jim, as you quite rightly highlighted, you did see significant interest and questions from investors ahead of today's call. So if I may just hand back to you and ask you to read out the questions, both pre-submitted and those that have come in through the live meeting, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so I will work through and answer as many of these questions as I have time to and feel in a position to. Some of them, there are some that are quite similar to one another, and I will roll those together where I can. So I'm just going to start at the top and work my way through. So there are quite a few questions about, whether the directors might buy shares. Why can't we buy shares? I mean, that's always a tricky question. It's down to individual directors to decide whether they want to do that. I guess just looking back at the history of the company, we have not generally been a company where directors have used shares in that way, as buy or sell signals. So the first thing I would say is that I would not interpret our purchasing shares or failing to purchase shares, in your view, as any particular sort of a signal. I think it's more just a reflection of who we are as individuals and how we approach working in small companies. What we are, however, is a company that controls its costs carefully, pays its employees and its directors very reasonable, modest salaries, especially compared with the AIM average, and a company where myself, my fellow board directors, and all of our employees are working extremely hard to try and keep our numbers moving in the right direction, to try and make the forecasts that are put out there for us and create long-term value in the company. So that's all I'm going to be able to say on that point. There are a couple of questions about significant shareholders. And again, I'm probably not going to be able to give you a fully satisfying answer. I mean, that obligations in regard to notification are individual responsibilities of shareholders. So these TR1 forms, it's the shareholders that have to complete those, submit them to the FCA, and send them to the company as well. All I can do is assure you that whenever we receive those forms, we then issue them as an RNS, within a very short period of time. So everything we have, you have. Unfortunately, I cannot police whether or not individual shareholders, accidentally or deliberately, miss TR1 notifications. What we do as a company approximately every 6 months is ask our registrar to do a beneficial ownership search, and publish the result of that on our website. We cannot do that. I don't think it's appropriate for us to do that more frequently than we do it at the moment, because it has a not insignificant cost associated with it. And I would prefer to spend that money on growing the company, rather than repeatedly and frequently updating that information. The other thing to say is that beneficial search is simply it may or may not be accurate in the way it works, as I'm sure you know, is that the registrar writes to all of the private client brokers and asks them for information. If they're meant to reply, generally they do, but that information may not be perfect, as it is not coming directly from the shareholders concerned. So if any of our significant shareholders are listening into this, obviously I would encourage you to comply with your obligations, and report any threshold changes to the market and to us. But that's that's all we can do about it as a company. Next question related to our pipeline, and do we still believe we have a strong pipeline? Was Servier the large pharma company that we spoke about? I think I tackled the second half of that question already. Yes, Servier is the large pharmaceutical company that we spoke about before. In terms of the pipeline, we still believe it is strong. I mean, a little bit of it it's like an iceberg. So, some of it is not visible to you. What's visible to you is significant client wins that are announceable, or where we agree with the client that we can announce them if they're smaller. But what is building beneath the surface is layers of potential new clients, from those where we've just had first contact, through to those where we've had a dialogue, through to those where we're in active discussions about a project, through to those where a specific proposal is under discussion. And bringing on board a professional and dedicated head of business development has really helped accelerate that formalization and put in place some process and structure around business development that we didn't simply have the resources to do before. Next question was about DNA damage repair work, and are Merck happy with the outcome of the project? Are there more projects coming? Again, it's hard to be specific here. I would say that we have a very strong relationship with Merck, that we're in a constant dialogue with them over the course of the year around the commissioning of new projects. As we've said in the past, we have gradually moved away with Merck from commissioning everything in sort of November, December time, to more of a rolling procurement where projects are commissioned and delivered over the course of the year. However, I can say with my hand on my heart that the total value of Merck projects for each of the last financial years has at least met or sometimes exceeded the original target that was announced back in 2017. So we feel like that relationship is strong and still going well. Let me just pick up on some questions that I haven't already covered in my presentation. There's a question about whether or not we can apply for a patent on any digital assets that come out of the NIHR-funded personalized dosing program. We keep this under constant review. I think those of you who who maybe are invested in other companies with software will know that traditional patent protection on software is not always possible or cost effective. However, there are other forms of IP such as copyright, know-how, and trade secret, which perhaps do apply in a more meaningful way to software, and we're looking at all of these, of course, as a way of protecting what we're doing. There is a question about DoseMeRx. I know I did mention that we still have an active dialogue with them in terms of their relationship and the process with tabula rasa that was announced back in February, I think it was. Again, I have no inside information on that, so all I see is what you see. I don't think they're going to tell me before they tell the market if and when something happens. As I have said before, our hope and expectation is that should that disposal be completed successfully, that DoseMeRx's new owner would be a larger company that is interested in personalized medicine and might therefore be looking to invest further in that field. And if that were the case, then I think PHYSIOMICS would be very well positioned to take advantage of that. And that's pretty much all I can say on that front. There's a question about Project Optimus, which I think I perhaps mentioned in a previous presentation. Project Optimus is an FDA initiative to look at and possibly even start to embed personalized dosing more in drugs as they're being developed. And here the distinction is that our current program is focused more on drugs which have already been approved, but the underlying technology could be applied equally to drugs that are in the R&D process. All I can say is that we do believe that Project Optimus goals are very closely aligned to our own in relation to personalized dosing, and might therefore represent some sort of a collaboration opportunity. I can't see any more at this time, but as and when there are any developments on that front, then we will clearly come back to the market and announce them. Okay, I think we've covered that. Yeah, I think we've covered the pipeline question and our revenue. There's a question about the rate of growth. I mean, it's always tricky, and at the risk of repeating myself, you saw from the earlier slide what the situation looked like when I arrived in the company. We really had one client, which was Merck, no pipeline, and really minimal revenues that were insufficient to cover even the bulk of our costs. Over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, myself and my colleagues have worked extremely hard to build us up to a situation where we have a nice stable of clients. We have a good portfolio of potential new clients. We've got significantly more substantial revenues than we had. We are in control of our expenditure, so that yes, this year we've chosen to invest more, but there are levers we can pull in either direction to manage our costs, and we have always done so very carefully and conservatively historically. I hope you will agree. So all of our effort, all of our energy is dedicated to making this company bigger and ultimately profitable and worth more for you guys. I think I mentioned Discentis already, so I think that covers all of the questions that we received prior to the meeting that I can speak to explicitly. Let me just have a quick look through the Q&As that have come in to see if there's anything that I haven't already addressed. Okay, so there's one here saying it's great to see new names on the client roster. How much of this is down to recent additions to the team? How much scope is there for these new client relationships to grow, and how busy are you currently at prospecting new business? Well, I think I covered this a little bit. You know, the new additions to the team, in particular, our head of business development has been instrumental in closing a number of the deals that have been announced over the last 12 months. You know, what we hope, and well, no, let me put it more strongly, what we expect to see over the course of this current financial year is that, you know, that additional business development resource will lead to, you know, new client wins that we would not otherwise have had without that resource. Clearly, we will continue to seek and hopefully win repeat business with existing clients as well. But you know, business development will be focused on getting new clients, and we are extremely busy and very actively doing that right now. Okay, there's another question here. Are pharma back to normal now and focusing on pre-COVID R&D, or are they still focusing on COVID-related vaccines? Well, obviously, we don't work a lot in the vaccine space. However, you know, my impression is that, you know, there were a number of companies that did well out of COVID by getting involved in testing or in vaccines. I think the ones that were involved in testing, you know, some of those, you know, that they've kind of had their day. And as testing is no longer such a material thing as it used to be, they're now having to, you know, think about how they can live their lives without that extra boost of testing revenue. In terms of the vaccines, I think the larger companies that are involved in vaccine R&D, you know, will continue to do that because, you know, COVID has not gone away, as you can see when you turn on the news every day. And so, you know, there will continue to be some focus there. I think, you know, for our clients that are mainly in the oncology space, you know, we see no diminution of activity in oncology R&D, and you know, companies are still spending. There is another question here saying, what is your USP compared with other companies offering similar services? So I think it's a number of things. So I think the virtual tumor platform that we have is unique, and no one else has that. It's very useful for looking at combination treatments of oncology in oncology settings. I think the fact that we focus mainly on oncology as a modeling company gives us a particular specialization that clients value. And I think at the moment, while we remain, you know, relatively small, I think that the flexibility and the nimbleness that enables us to give to clients is highly valued. I think that's the last question that I have, and I'll close at that point and wish you all the best.
That's great, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for your time and for updating investors this afternoon. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of PHYSIOMICS PLC, would like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and may I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.